Hi, I am Paige Lynn. When I started this project, I knew immediately what our main problem would be, solely because it is a huge issue in our school with the amount of ELL students that we have and that we get into our school each year. These students usually don't stay long, maybe a few years or so, and then they're gone again, but um, that makes this almost more of a priority to be able to teach them while they're here instead of them just moving around and missing everything that is going on in all the schools. So, in general, English language learners have a lot of issues that people see, that teachers see more importantly. One big one is social, just because they cannot communicate with the students at their new school. So there's that barrier, whether it's at recess in the classroom, trying to be partners with them. It's an issue for them to be able to communicate with other students and other peers their age. So they seem to gear towards their kind of their own kind and um, their own language level. And so sometimes those even aren't the best kids to be paired up with, but it ends up having to be that way just so they can participate. Um, they struggle emotionally because they are kind of bounced around and they're thrown into this new school where they can't understand anyone, they can't talk back, um, they don't socially fit in, and so that can be a huge emotional burden on them too. Physically, just because of the language barrier as well, and academically, so they get sometimes we even put them in a grade below just so they can catch up and learn the more simple vocab before they're placed in the next grade and just thrown in where they should be. And so they're already kind of behind academically, and we see a lot of these uh, English language learners that come into our school with zero English. Sometimes we see them graduate a year or two after they're supposed to, just because of the language barrier when they first moved here. So this is a problem um, in classrooms in our school because they cannot communicate and they cannot participate in the classroom, so they can't learn the material that we're doing. And sometimes they come in with a little bit of language known, and so that is almost more difficult because then the rest of the class is getting kind of behind because we're worrying about slowing down and making sure they understand and they can keep up with the rest of the class. And so that's why it has a larger impact than just them, because their students are, or their classmates are having to slow down and wait for them as well when the teacher is trying to explain something to them. And so this is why it's a big problem in our school. And the answer from a lot of I'll show you the annotated bibliography, excuse me, was vocabulary. And that was a huge thing that the research has shown, is that they need to learn the basic vocabulary of the English language before that they can learn the verbs and the adverbs and adjectives and all the rest of that, because we talk about vocabulary. We talk about, like, those are the people and the places and the things in our sentences. It's like a big bulk of our sentences. So if they can get those, then they can start putting sentences together of what the teacher's talking about, whether it's going to the bathroom or whether it's a math problem or talking about in the hallway or sit at your desk. So those kinds of things they can start to put together if they have a basic knowledge of vocabulary. So through the annotated bibliography, the big things that stuck out were language development, the gap, how big the gap is. Vocabulary should be taught first. This was a huge underlying message that all of the research was saying, and that needs to be multi-layered, kind of like it says over here in the teach in levels of words. And so that's kind of where I take this a little bit with interactive lessons. So another big thing in the research was that ELL students need a lot of pictures and a lot of other ways to describe things so that they can build a deeper knowledge of understanding and deeper level of understanding. My option one that I found was just to use Google Translate. This is what a few teachers of ours do. They have an iPad or a computer available at all times to the student, and they simply translate everything, or like big things that the teacher is saying. So the positives of that is the immediate feedback. The student can understand what the teacher is saying right away, and it's constant communication. So you can talk to them in real time. You don't have to wait for them to put it together, go back to their flashcards or anything else. That you can Google Translate it and they will know what they're saying, but it's in their language. So one thing that they're not doing is they're not really learning English language. They are just, it's getting translated into their language. So a lot of these students won't even try to learn it because it'll just translate it into their language so quick that they won't even listen to what the teacher's saying before it. They will just automatically stop listening to the teacher and wait for it to translate. So it's not like they're listening, they're watching the words that she's saying and trying to match them up with words in their language. So there's no really learning going on there of the English language. It's quick, but it's not fast enough, so the teacher can't say everything. You're going to have to pick out the big points, and then the student can translate those, but they can't get all of the middle of the way things, or all the tips and tricks that the teacher puts in randomly. They're just going to get kind of the big ideas. And then lastly, another con is that you need technology constantly, so they have to have it right next to them, ready to go. And in our school, that's just not possible. We don't have enough technology. In the second grade at our school, we share 35 laptops for 55 students. So they stay in one teacher's room, and we have to have kids go get them and whatnot. And so it's really hard to have constant technology in our classrooms, which we're trying to get to change, but that takes time. So option number 2 was vocabulary word flashcards. So on these flashcards, there would be a picture, a word, a sentence, and then the word in their language. And so they could then flip the flashcard over, and it would be the sentence or the word in English, I'm sorry. And so they would then learn the two put together, and they can learn it with the picture, with the sentence, with the definition, all these put together ways. One thing about this is it's life lasting, so they're learning the vocabulary, and so that's going to be the first thing that they learn, as well as they're going to learn it in a deeper way because of the pictures and the definition and the word in their language, all kind of connecting and put together as they learn it. It's individualized, so you can make these per kid, you can make them for a group, you can share them between kids, you can do a lot of different things, especially because they're online. And they can do them at any time because they're online on the technology. So what I would use for this first is Quizlet. You can put a bunch of stuff on one flashcard, and then they can flip it over. They can do quizzes, they can do games, they can do all different kinds of things. And the cons was that there's no teacher assistant, so you can't have a teacher sitting right next to you kind of helping you. It would be all individualized, which could be difficult at first for them to learn the skills to study and learn these flashcards. And the accountability would be all on them to get them done, because they could just flip through them and not really learn them. So it would be all on them. Option 3 is a app I found called Adventures for Kids. It's fun. It's interactive with games, but it's learning the English language at a slower pace through games and interactive activities, which I think is great. But in the second grade, I feel like students, especially in our school, who we don't get to use technology all the time, would find this too distracting because there's too much fluff, there's too many other things to click on and do, where they wouldn't actually be learning the knowledge because they're so excited to be on the technology. And I think it's a slower way to learn. Like, I think you learn it through games and through activities, which is fun for them, but it's also slower. So the best choice I picked was the flashcards. This is because Quizlet allows you to make so many different sets. You can make like a classroom set, a hallway set, an office set with different vocabulary words. And there is a way to hold them accountable because it tracks what they do and how they do on quizzes and games and stuff inside Quizlet. Um, and so they can have their own login, own password, and they can get on and complete these sets of flashcards. So I think that's really valuable and really exciting for them. Kind of it's their own thing. They get to learn on their own, but the accountability will be up to them. And I think that'll be difficult at first, but a good reward system is also a key to that being successful. Implementing this, I would do it in groups of words. So you can see like the first words they'll do, the first set of flashcards will be door, window, desk, teacher, pencil, paper, chair. So they're kind of like basic classroom objects. And then notebook, binder, book, computer, and table. And so they'd kind of spend those 2 days learning those and practicing those, and then they'd take one of the quizzes on Quizlet, and they'd get a score out of 12 on how they did on that. Those are 3 days each, and then on the 7th day, they'll take a quiz that'll show them how well they did, and that's what I can record, a kind of a way to hold them accountable. The key with this, though, is consistency, and it needs to be done every day, and they need to be going through these words every day so that they make them more permanent in their mind, and so that they are life-lasting. And that goes with fidelity, too, making sure that it gets in and gets done. Recording will be a huge thing, too. It's not something where the teacher can just shove them off and say, hey, go do all these flashcard sets. Let me know when you're done. The teacher needs to kind of be interactive and checking in on them because they don't know any of the language here, so they're going to get distracted really easily being on technology and doing different things as well. And that goes along with the responsibility. They're going to have a big responsibility to get this done. And if they do ever want to learn the English language, it's going to be important for them. And if they want to succeed in the classroom, it's going to be important for them. And the readiness. They need to be ready to actually work. And I had a couple of students last year who came in and they didn't really want to learn the English language. And so it makes a huge difference on their readiness and willingness to work. I actually did, being in the summer class, we didn't have to implement it, but I did send it to one of my aides does a tutoring in the summer with a couple of my kids, and so I sent it to her, and 2 of them are ELL students, and she just had them do a couple of the flashcard sets, and it worked really well, and she kind of thought it was a good middle of the way, not having something physical, and you can take sometimes probably you can't get pictures on there very well and things like that. And so she could take the computer with and show them the different things in the school that they were talking about and the different vocabulary words. So I feel like that'll be a benefit too, to be able to have it on the technology where they can take it anywhere and go see things. And another extension activity I thought was then you give them a list of all the words and they have to go around the school and take a picture. Like with the iPad, with a camera, they have to take a picture of each of the things and label them. So that's a way to implement more technology and get them practicing those words. So I really liked this project. I think this is a great way to make our ELL students more successful and catch up quicker. I think a lot of it's up to them, but it's also our job to motivate them and create that high standard that we need to hold them at as well. So that is all. Thank you.